Now, I was apprehensive to make this video because I am getting increasingly more scared for my life, but I don't think this is the time to shy away or become a coward, so I got some stuff to get off my chest. Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden set the tone for the next 4 years. The event went viral with clip after clip of unhinged, racist sound bites. One speaker after the next escalated the rhetoric from bashing immigrants to US citizens. Former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson joked about Kamala Harris being a low IQ Samoan Malaysian, whatever the frick that means. Then Trump's former chief of staff, Sid Rosenberg, jokingly called the event a Nazi rally. The most explosive of all the comments was made from comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who called Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage. The comment that caused many Latino and Puerto Rican voters to question their decision for Donald Trump. While Trump still gained 13 points with this demographic compared to 2020, according to NBC, it no doubt hit deep for the representative of a presidential candidate to attack some of the most marginalized US citizens. All I gotta say is free Puerto Rico. All of this is a reminder of not only the past year of campaigning, but a post-2016 era that welcomed this emboldened white supremacist attitude. While the economy ended up partially gaining Trump the victory, ABC still reports in an exit poll that voters largely view him still as too extreme. His rhetoric around immigrants and even his despise for regular American citizens has become more intense as he calls for the military to be sicked on leftists, or what he calls the enemy within. Many of us were terrified post-election day in 2016 of what a Trump presidency could mean. Well, that prospect has only become more terrifying as a second one looms over us. Were we reminded too late? Was a Joe Biden adjacent repeat too much of a chance to take? Are we too apathetic, or some combination of them all? Now, I want to paint a picture. One that takes place at the same venue where Trump had this epic final rally, Madison Square Garden. However, instead of it being 2024, it's February 20th, 1939. The German organization Bund is sponsoring a rally to celebrate George Washington's birthday. There is a 30-foot banner of the first president placed right beside swastikas. Some of the 20,000 attendees wore Nazi armbands as they recited the Pledge of Allegiance, held up signs that read "Stop Jewish Domination of Christian America," and waved American flags. Their speaker, Fritz Kuhn, addressed them as patriots and spoke of a vision for a white, genteel America.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, American patriots, I'm sure I do not come before you tonight as a complete stranger. We, with American ideals, demand that our government shall be returned to the American people who founded it.
If you ask what we are actively fighting for under our charter, first, a social, just, white, Gentile, ruled United States.
85 years later, a similar rhetoric is festering, one that separates us from them and narrows what it means to be American. Instead of attendees holding up signs disparaging Jewish people, they hold up signs that read "Mass Deportation Now," a policy that was shared by Hitler during his reign. Trump speakers hide behind dog whistles and America First, but we know what they're advocating for. This policy has already begun to rip families apart and put anyone who fits the description into the crosshairs. They've been targeting Native Americans, for God's sakes. I don't know where they plan to deport them back to, but okay. There are already plans to use Guantanamo Bay, a terrorist torture site, as a concentration camp, along with El Salvador's biggest prison, which I've already covered the enormous amounts of human rights violations that occur there. The bottom line is, it'll be horrifying, it'll be brutal, and it's happening as we speak. There is no clear opposition to counter this position. The Democrats have followed right behind, calling for a lighter version of Trump's policies. Tougher reform on the border, more walls, more surveillance on drug trafficking, all of which are devoid of fact and, most importantly, humanity. As mentioned in my immigration hysteria video, 90% of drugs are smuggled across regular points of entry by US citizens. Why have Dems co-signed Republican framing? Why haven't they told the truth? Moderating their position hasn't brought them any success, but only worked to normalize harmful rhetoric, which could lead to the most horrifying event in American history. For the past year or so, news outlets have begun to throw around the word fascism. But what does that really mean? Are they simply using it as a buzzword, or does it have some sort of merit as we enter a new Trump era? Fascism, by definition, is a populist ideology that exalts nation and often races above the individual. It's often associated with centralized, autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader and characterized by severe economic and forcible suppression of opposition. Whew, that was a lot. Is this an apt description? And if so, what could that mean for the future? Now I want to lay some groundwork, as if I am going to compare Trump to Hitler, I think it's important that we know how Hitler came to power in the first place. Now, we are all familiar with the genocide that took place during World War II that resulted in the death of 6 million Jewish people and 5 million leftist, non-white, trans, and disabled people. But very few of us are familiar with how such a volatile figure came to power. History is an important reference point so we can learn from our shortcomings and never repeat them. I see a lot of, some of you out there on Twitter and stuff being like, maybe it's a little too soon to compare Trump to Hitler. But girl, what was the point of learning about it if we have to wait for a genocide to occur, for people to be locked up in concentration camps before we say something? Hitler was Hitler before then. So let's break it down. Post-World War I, nationalism saw a rise in Germany. This collective of parties was called the folk parties, which became frustrated with their defeat. They felt as if they didn't actually lose the war, but were betrayed. The consensus from all of them was leftists and Jewish people were the cause of their demise. At this time, Hitler was a member of the National Socialist Party, which is a part of this broader collective. You may be confused by this choice of using the name socialist, as they were one of the Nazis' targets during World War II, but they calculated that this would draw in disillusioned left-adjacent Germans. In 1923, Hitler felt emboldened to overthrow the government. He carried out this plan with the help of former World War I veterans, but failed miserably and was subsequently arrested. His imprisonment, which functioned more as a house arrest, was a media spectacle. This publication and craze won him favor with the German public as they looked upon him with empathy. During this time is whenever he wrote his infamous manifesto Mein Kampf, a semi-autobiographical piece that outlined his long-winded frustrations and how Germany could gain dominance again. This was his plan. Unify Germany with Austria and all German-speaking people, take back territory that was rightfully Germany's, including Czechoslovakia and the port of Danzig, destroy the virus that is the Jewish people, expand Germany's borders or living room, or what the Germans called Lebensraum. In the broader German public, communism and the Jewish people were already being linked. The country's Communist Party at the time was controlled by a Jewish woman named Rosa Luxemburg, or the Red Rose. Labor unions and the left were already blamed for Germany's downfall during the war, and after multiple strikes faltered the war machine. Many began to fear Germany would be the next country overtaken by communism, a fear Hitler took advantage of. Business owners and the wealthy were a big force in Hitler's rise. German industrialists financially backed him with the hopes that he would combat the rise of communism, something ideologically against their existence. These individuals weren't necessarily Nazis, but neoliberals who aligned based on the hatred of labor unions. They thought their money would control him, however, it would be him who would be doing the controlling. After America's economic collapse in 1929, Europe was hit with a similar depression. People yearned for a savior, someone to ease their pain or at least give them someone to blame. Hitler was that guy. He told them leftists and Jews were the source of their problems and that he would be the one to rescue them. The German public fell right into his trap, resulting in the Nazis doubling their seats in the parliament from 7% to 13%. At their height, they secured nearly half of all of the seats. The president at the time was an old war general named Paul von Hindenburg. Hitler's next move was to become the chancellor, or the second most powerful position in the government. The only issue was he needed Hindenburg's appointment. Now, Hindenburg regularly resisted the growing power of the Nazis, at one point calling Hitler a Bohemian corporal. Eventually, though, he rolled over after pressure and appointed Hitler as chancellor, hoping it would quiet him. It didn't. Now he had full reign to invoke terror upon the country. He deployed brown shirts, or his paramilitary group, with even more frequency. They were instructed to harass or even beat opposing politicians to death. He also instituted the Enabling Act, which gave him absolute power. Despite this limiting the rest of the government, they didn't dare vote against Hitler, and it was signed into law. Then once the old president died, the Führer was born. His first plan was the Third Reich, or Three Principles. He would override the Treaty of Versailles without a single shot. Second was the destruction of the Jewish people, which would call for deportations from Germany and then Europe altogether. Third would be building back the economy through the military-industrial complex. This initial plan set up the country to allow a dictator to carry out a genocide in their backyard. Now that we understand this background, how does Trump fit this model? For one, Hitler and him share a history of failed coups. While January 6 mostly made the country into a laughingstock, there was a lot of concerning moments within it. Trump supporters fashioned an execution stage for former Vice President Mike Pence, waved white nationalist flags or were directly from these organizations, and tried desperately to barge into the main chamber to kill politicians in the midst of certifying an election. That anger they felt was nearly identical to far-right Germans after World War I. The Nazi Party championed this narrative that they didn't actually lose, but that they were betrayed or had this plot against them. Sounds awfully familiar, huh? Trump's supporters echoed a similar sentiment after 2020 election, claiming it was stolen from them. Thankfully, they had no idea how to implement a successful coup, but their propensity to resort to violence after defeat is quite alarming, especially as Trump has now pardoned many of them. Could they become his brown shirts? Trump is also backed by the wealthy elite, the same force that helped Hitler rise to power. According to Forbes, Elon Musk has gifted Trump a reported $130 million through his super PAC. The billionaire aligns with Trump on the crusade against wokeness, especially after he disowned his trans daughter. He has been on this mission to crush and dispel any semblance of quote-unquote woke culture. He's just honestly a piece of shit, okay, let's just be honest. He's used his forced purchase of Twitter to his advantage, turning the site into a botted right-wing fiesta. He's unbanned neo-Nazis like Andrew Anglin, and another account that blatantly posted child SA material of a toddler. Adolf Hitler's Nazi rampage is still up to this day as I'm making this video. All of this has only created this environment for far-right sentiment to thrive. He claims it's in defense of free speech, but it's hard to believe such a thing when accounts that show any sort of dissent are banned. His open use of the literal Nazi salute, the Roman salute, at the inauguration and the hiring of another Nazi in Doge only further cements that his loyalty to quote-unquote free speech really only goes in one direction. Don't worry though, he's pro-Israel, so he can't be anti-Semitic. Trump's third biggest donor, speaking of Israel, Miriam Adelson, backs the future president in hopes that he will further Israel's own fascist regime in the Middle East. During his first term, their alliance influenced the Abraham Accords, which sidestepped Palestinian agency from the conversation, an event that escalated tensions in the region, leading to October 7th. Now, Trump always likes to say, if I were president, October 7th wouldn't have ever happened. Little does he know that, well, I'm sure he is aware and just doesn't want to admit it, but little does he know that what October 7th happened because he was president. With a second Trump presidency, she hopes Israel will be able to annex the West Bank, Palestinian land currently occupied by the IOF. This is a process that would bring the horrific scenes of Gaza that we've seen for the past 16 months to this piece of land, only furthering Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. His alliance with these billionaires will cause the middle class concerns to be glanced over. Similarly to Hitler's regime, he claims he will solve the economic burden many Americans are feeling, but his plans for tariffs and tax cuts for the wealthy tell a different story. So far since he's become president, I for one haven't seen a single executive order that helped the egg prices go down. And I've been watching very closely because my grocery bill is high as hell. But you know, at least DEI is being purged from the government. At least that's happening. I definitely asked for that. The money is the only plight he hears. It is clear that he will prioritize his donors' concerns over the people's. There's been much talk about Project 2025 over the past few years, or this plan to deregulate the government. This involves stripping away institutions like the Department of Education and bolstering the prominence of right-wing figureheads in high positions. According to The Independent, it'll work to compound on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, allowing further prosecution of women who seek abortions and limiting access to emergency contraception. While Trump has denied any ties to this plan, it was formulated by his former aides, the Heritage Foundation, which has long had ties to the Republican Party. We've already seen this plan hard at work over the past few weeks, from looking to privatize NOAA or the weather agency to a faith department being established. So much for separation of church and state, to the dismantling of government institutions like USAID. He is a weaselly little liar. His ass is doing Project 2025 bar for bar, which we already knew was gonna happen. Hitler used Germany's economic depression to his advantage, blaming it on marginalized individuals to further his own agenda. This recent election shows a similar pattern. The American people are desperate for stability. They want money in their pockets, food on the table, and they don't care how they get it. Trump weaponizes this disdain for the previous administration to further his Hitlerian border policy. He tells them immigrants are taking away their affordable housing, their jobs, their low prices, and mass deportation will fix it. Now, this is the most alarming policy of them all, in my opinion. It is almost a complete one-to-one of how Hitler secured his power. I've had to repeat this so many times, okay, over the past few months, and I'm hoping each time I repeat it, it will circulate into more and more people's skulls and won't just go in one ear and out the other. I'm hoping. But immigrants aren't the source of your problems in the slightest. They pay into Social Security and get absolutely nothing back because guess what? They are undocumented, so they can't take advantage of any social benefits, the little social benefits that we get in this godforsaken country. They work intensive jobs for slave wages. They're the reasons why you get strawberries in your grocery store at the low price that they are, or at the lowest price that they can be at this point. They commit less crime per capita compared to US citizens, yet they can so easily be vilified as this vulnerable group. Our fellow humans, once again, similarly to the Jews during the Holocaust, are being turned on us as we are told our prosperity comes at the price of their lives. We have lost the meaning of never again means never again. We have so much information at our fingertips, but yet we've forgotten the horrors of Hitler's reign, how he came to power. Every day that goes by, I can see how something so horrific was able to unfold. I'm watching as people on the internet just deny reality, either because it's too scary to confront, or they're so loyal to one individual that they have lost the ability to have nuance or form their own opinions. Being on a particular side is not team sports. You do not need to defend every single thing that they do. But yet I see that happening time and time again, even the most indefensible stuff. How is it that we have so much information and yet so little truth? How? The initial plan during the Holocaust wasn't to commit genocide, although I'm sure Hitler was delighted at the idea. There's a reason why it was called the final solution. It evolved over time from ghettos to mass deportation to camps to endless death. Trump's dehumanization over the past few years will only make that process easier. He has already stated at a Michigan rally that he views immigrants as non-human. He has no value for their life, and yours, frankly. The concentration camps will be full to the brim of a mix of undocumented immigrants and American citizens caught in the crossfire, but all of a similar shade. When it gets too expensive to maintain, especially after the amount of resources it took to capture them, there's no telling what calculation the Trump administration will make. It is my hope that it won't come to that we won't repeat what we fought against nearly a century ago. At that rally in 1939 at Madison Square Garden, despite the room being filled with so much hate, there was one individual who felt it was his responsibility to stop it. Isidore Greenbaum was a young Jewish plumber from Brooklyn who snuck into the rally that night. He sat there and listened for 3 hours, surrounded entirely by people who viewed his existence as a virus. Eventually he got up and sauntered down the aisle, getting closer to Fritz Kuhn. Standing at the foot of the stage, he decided to jump up and snatch the microphone cables, yelling "Down with Hitler." He was quickly tackled, beaten, and humiliated by the police, who delivered him with a black eye. But Greenbaum never wavered from that decision, saying he would have done it again years later. When the odds are stacked against us, when there is no party or entity to protect us, our interest, our democracy, our freedom, we must be our own light. As Democrats begin to do the blame game, sparking a crusade against wokeness as well, not dissimilar to conservatives, it has become very clear that they don't fight for us either. They are utterly incapable of looking at their own wrongdoings. When it comes down to it, they are beholden to these same masters and will spit just as viciously in our faces when we don't bend to them. If we want change, we will have to make it. No one will do it for us. As they say, the revolution will not be televised. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. It means a lot, as always. I want to thank my Patreon members who have stuck with me even through my 1-month break. I appreciate it, girl. As well as my YouTube members, and all of you, honestly. All of you that are watching right now. I didn't mean for a video like this to set the tone for the rest of the year, but I really, honestly, it's one of my favorite pieces of writing I've ever done in my life. And so I was already thinking about making it into a video, but I was scared, girl. I'm not trying to get arrested, but we're not there yet, and hopefully we won't ever get there. I would like to continue to criticize whoever the frick I want. That would mess up this entire channel, okay? That's kind of what I do. I have opinions and I say them. Also, my shirt is perfect for this video. I've already worn it in the Wicked video, but it says, "People die fast at politicians' hands. I'm perfectly serving to expose a fascist." I've got so much in the tank for you guys, so many great ideas that will honestly take a long time to make because I gotta do a lot of research, I gotta watch stuff, but I got so much in the tank for you girls. I thought about doing a bit of an expose video on some particular YouTuber, but I may or may not do that. I'm deciding currently if I want to engage in the fuel that is that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.